Welcome to Preserving Our Oral History. Today we're featuring Basil Simon.
I am Basil Simon. I was born in St. Cuthbert's village. The village is St. Cuthbert's. No other name is added to this. This is St. Cuthbert's. Pakuri was a tree that was around the village, but it was never the name of the village. It was the name of the tree. That is when I know myself at least about from 12 years, right? 12 years, and then I went to school in the village. It was primary school only. So I went up to, there were farms at that time, right? So I went to farm 1, no, farm 2, because that is all what it had. And we finished school, and because of, let me say, poverty, right? We couldn't have go more, and then there was no other places. They mapped. We were out of the map completely. We didn't know about Georgetown, going to school into Georgetown. We know about going to school here and finish. When you finish, you finish. Today it's different. And after I leave school, my parents used to do farming. We used to do farming in the Korkobani area. We were the ones who actually cut down the bush from the Korkobani Creek right down to the Shumankuri. I don't know if you know the Shumankuri, going to Barber Channel. And at the age of 18, my mother, they built a house at Barber Channel, which is up the Mahika River about a mile walking on land. And we reside there for some time, nearly about 5 to 6 years. And one day when my mother was in the farm, my sister, she was stripping straw, and unaware of the fire, how the breeze is blowing, it caught up with some of the straw. And the kitchen was in front of the house, like the cooking place, the kitchen was in front of the place where we sleep in another house. So when the breeze blew, everything burned up in a flash. And then after that happened, we came back halfway, where they call Korkobani. So my parents brought us back to Korkobani. We built a house, we lived there. We lived there for some years, and in those years I started to become an adult now. I went to work, come back, and there were lots of animals at that time around here, because it wasn't like how it is today. There were forests and animals living actually close to the village, so the people could have get meat and so to eat. Because we even made traps. Everything was not by shooting an animal. We had arrow bows at that time. Having an arrow bow was important in those days. And I always tell my children it is important even up to today. Because security-wise it is important to have an arrow bow. Yeah, but coming back to our days, we get meat and then we get the cassava. Today, we can use the road to go out to Georgetown to purchase stuffs. But in those days, we had to go through the river, but we can't go bare hand. We had to make some materials they call the posts. There were other people from the creek cutting ton, what they call it. Hard work. Hard going down too because you gotta go through the rain, the sun, to the Maika village where they call Belmont. And so we would go, it would take us like about 4 days to go down. And we go down like if we having sports, we fish and everything. When we have our raft, we got a small boat beside the raft. And then when we meet the places where we could make a catch, we go and fishing. We fishing and we cook and we eat. And in those days there were fish plentiful. Today fish is not plentiful because of the fishermen who set a lot of seine and everything, you know. Yeah, and we would stay at the Mahika like about a week. Because in those days things were very cheap. We were under the colonial government at that time. So things were cheap, the British colonial then. And things were very, very cheap. Like drinks was only like a penny. Bread, you get penny bread, fried fish and everything. And so on. And we would stay there and enjoy the week, and then we will come again in our boat, paddle back to the village. It would take us some time, but it depends on how long we want to take, because sometimes we rest up the friends and who we know, right? Sometimes we might know, like, I don't know if you know, like these guys who come up here and they know us. Like we had known John Sargio at that time. We would stop by him, and sometimes he would be so friendly. He don't want us to come up so early. We would stay sometime 2 days with him, and then we go to another friend and we say, "No, man, we can't stay no more. With time going," and then we come up back. By the time we meet to the landing there, you could think we have telephone. Our family is expecting us every day, so they could help us drug up the ration that we bought, the village. Yeah, and then we gotta fetch it up and bring it up. Yeah, and that is how we live. But we used to work up the Mahika Creek head, they call 7 Mile. My grandfather, they opened that place like a grand landing. So they had huts there, and we made materials and everything to go down. Sometimes we cut spar. In those days, they don't cut boar stick. Boar stick started to be cutting lately. Even until now, they cut boar stick and other things like spar and so. But in those days, it was sheer materials like the 8 feet posts. That was mostly wanted. And in those days, there were a lots of old people who we knew, like Auntie Winifred. I don't know if you know her. They had Uncle Chris. They had my grandfather Jimmy Dundas, and they used to tell us a lot of stories. One time, my grandfather he sat with us, and he told us a story. But before we go into the story, I want to still go on more about the conditions that we were in. So we drug our ration, and then we had like people giving us lists, just like how you do the cars today. They could give them your list, and so we had to. They do with us too during those days in the boat, and you purchase these things for the people. If it's a little kerosene or some rice, salt was important and much. Being Amerindians, we know how to live in the forest. From the forest then. So there are many things we live off from. That is now we coming into our culture now. We live from the Turu, right? We got the Ite ball. You know about it now. Yeah, but that is history, and up to now it's continuing, and it's a nice beverage. The Toro tea, oh gosh, that's so good. It's nice. And in those days they had the farm, they had pine farm, plenty. My mother used to have about 2 acres of pine farm. And when the pine they ripe, you can grate them on one another. Ripe pines you grate it easily on the annex pine then. And you would use that pine that you grate, and you mix it with the Toro tea. That's a lovely beverage too. And so we live off the cassava too. But we don't know like about the foreigners, like how the people in the interior, far interior know. We know about cassava. They know about foreign. So we would use the cassava, which is our culture food, you gotta say, and we use it with fish. We use the fish in all forms. If we have oil, we fry it. If we don't have oil, we dry it. And we use the kale from the cassava juice, which is very nice to cook with when it's okay then, because it's something like a poison, you know. So you gotta boil the cassava juice, and the fishes that you catch now, you know, it's all kinds of fish you catch, like wabre, you get pira, you get weishi, you get all these fishes you can, you know, cook. There's no style in cooking it in the kale. You cook it and you just make a boil. And if you get wild meat also, you cook it with it. The dry wild meat is so nice. Hmm. Yeah, and that is how we actually live. And then you make different bread from the cassava bread. You make Kerali. I don't know if you know what it is. Kerali is very nice. And this Tacoma is from Long. Tacoma is a history. I used to eat it a lot, Tacoma, because today's the trees actually they're depleting, you gotta say. And it's one thing about our village, we gotta be very careful how we use things. As a concerned citizen then, I always check on these things. But we don't go into that because that would be too much. We can't talk about sustainable things now. Um, yeah, so the history that we're looking into is our way back from where we came from. As I said, we born here, right? And we had a lot of old people who knew some things like herbs then. They know to cure. I don't know if you know about little sores you have on your foot. Up to now I have a sore mark here. And I cure that with wild maran. I don't know if you know wild maran. And wild maran is simple to thing. Just apply on your foot. You just put it in your hands, a few leaves, and you put it in your hands and you do it like this. And you take some salt, not much, just a little pinch on you. And you apply there. And up to now, nothing never come out there. Yeah, and for diarrhea, we have tabanero. And you get the tabanero tree, you can peel off the bark and scrape the inside, and you use a cup, and you put the bark in the cup, add a little water, and you drink it. Diarrhea cut out. Yeah, it's very fast. And there's another tree too they call, I forgot the name now, but it's a vine. It used to be around here plentiful. I don't know if my wife could remember the name, but if I could get the name, I would tell you. That is very good too, because my father-in-law, Richard Ferreira, he used to do it for his grandchildren. That is my children too. And when he used that, it cut out the diarrhea. And in those days, the people used to make Paiwari. Paiwari leaves. Today we don't get the natural Paiwari. We get long time they used to make this Paiwari, they chew it, but they get different ways of doing it. Today those culture they are dying then. They actually die. But what they used to do after chewing it, they boil it for so many hours then. They boil it actually whole night. It would leave on a fire that you will set up, and it will thing there for the whole night. It will just keep warm. It boiled before, right? But you always keep a steady fire that so that it could boil out anything that is there then. So they would put the Paiwari now into jugs. Nowadays you don't see those jugs, but they had the jugs in those days because the British, they used to bring from the Dutch people across. Big jugs. The jugs they used to got 6 gallons, it could hold 6 gallons inside. You don't see those jugs around because all get bust up and all kind of thing. So they used to use that, and they would invite people for work in the village. That is what they call a Mashramani now. You're going from Mashramani, they call it, I don't know if you could take down this word, they call it Mashramani. Mashramani is Mashramani, that is the word they steal from people who dance up on Republic Day now. Mashramani is when you gather around for work. And you're going to complete this work, you're going to drink, you're going to eat the same fish I talk about, you're going to eat, you're going to bring all the food you know about, and you're going to eat. Now that you finish working, is enjoyment now. And you're going to drink. Yeah. It used to be nice, but then I was young at that time. And I enjoy how they used to do it, because the big people for me then, bigger people for me, I see them sporting. Because at that time, remember, there were changes coming all the time. Because I actually came into the changes. Because in those days, my grandfather and great uncles, they don't even know about drinking alcohol too much, only when they go down the river to Jamaica. But to bring up alcohol in here at that time, it could not have, it could not have paid them then to bring it to sell because it was very cheap too. So, but why they could not bring it to this is because of the work they carried, the work was cheap too. So it's corresponding all the time. Work cheap, the value, the cost of food was cheap, and so that's it. And we had to go into changes then. And so I met with muscatel and alcohol in the village afterward. After I came into like about 18 years or so, 18, 19, 20, I see the changes. People started to drink, and actually this Mashramani, which is Mashramani now, it was going out. People didn't want to do that anymore. They started to pay people for do work, and it remained like that until today. Any work you want to do in the village, you gotta pay people. So that is one of the culture that we lost them, because if I ask somebody to do some work for me, they would want to pay, right? So that is how we lost those culture, and that is how changes come about then. But before, let me come back to more down in the history. Before we went in to Barbashana to live, we used to live on the mission cell. This mission was not big, you know. The, the map of this village was not big. It was just around from where Auntie Charlotte lived up to where Denise lived. A little village, but with just few people. The road, this is where I come in now with the road. The road that go to Timiri was, it came through Charlotte. Straight, it was, you can't even see the track now today. That was the main road. That road that come through Mackinac is a road that they used to pull logs and posts and all sorts of things from till Pakuri Island. I think you know Pakuri Island, which is in the trail. So we used to live in the mission, and we used to be very loving to one another. Not like today. If you kill a bush cow in those days, you would make sure every house get at least a pong, and that was the way people lived. Because you don't have to look for money, because money didn't circulate in them time. But today, you know, things change. Even so with the cassava, the kale, you know, a neighbor don't have this, you don't have kale, you don't have a pine, you don't have, you know, you assist them, you give them. And that is our culture. And since changes come about and people talking about the culture, I never hear them talking about that part of the people who live here in this village before us. They were loving to people. They always make sure that you have food. You can't starve with people like them because you love. And when you look back into the scripture, it talks about love. People must love. It talks about the commandment that you must love one another, love your neighbor. And you see, that was our culture. And that is something lost today. Today you have to buy things. I went out yesterday and come back, and then I hear selling a piece of cassava on like Fort Tacoma for $1,000. I don't know how far they're going. Anyway, that is just that. That is how far we are now. Yeah. So that is my part that I can actually say, but I still have a story to say. Yeah, at one time, my grandfather sat with us, and they got this Kanaima story. These Kanaima people used to follow Araks. They and the Araks don't agree. And you know we are Araks up here, so they don't agree. They're always at war with us. So they kill one of the family in those days. That was some time ago. I can't even remember the year, but because that was in the days of the old people. My father, whose name is Papadon. Papadon. So he went fishing in, and he sat in a camp, probably taking air and looking after his jabale, they call it, the meat that is on the dresser, like, no? The barbecue. he was looking after it, and when he been turning his meat and so on the barbecue thing, he he saw a person behind him, and the person put down his child, and he started to attack him, and he, whilst fighting with the man, his other brother came, and his other brother take the little child and chop him up and put him on the barbecue again. So Barbie cut him and then threw him away. And that is how far they used to be with the Kanaima. So up to this day, the Kanaima hate the Dundases. But there are so many things that our old people used to know that is lost today. Our culture is lost completely because of the old people. They have fault too, because if you know something, you're supposed to teach your children about it. And today, yeah, where I am, it is lost, yes, but we still have some clues about it. It's like if the Kanaima want to follow you, you could stop them. You could get the wild mango tree that have a lot of roots, right? They got roots all fashioned. So now you got to go through these roots and come back like how this camera is here. You go through the thing, you come back, and then you go, and then you get to one mucko tree. You do one leaf at the top like this, and you bust the mucro, and then you come through it. You put the mucro as an arch, and then you go through, and then that will cut out all the Kanaimas. So much good.
Thank you to all the donors that made this project possible. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye! Until the next time.